My dear students, today in this class we can study about the main points of lesson 1, sensations and responses. First we can study what are called stimuli. The senses that evoke responses in organisms are called stimuli. Examples: taste, touch, sound, cold, heat, light, smell, etc. Some stimuli are formed from our surroundings. The stimuli that are formed from our surrounding are known as external stimuli. The examples are taste, touch, sound, heat, light, cold, smell, etc. The stimuli that are formed inside our body are known as internal stimuli. Examples: hunger, thirst, and headache. So the stimuli are of two types: external stimuli and internal stimuli. How does the body receive the stimuli? The body receives the stimuli with the help of receptors. The next we are going to study about receptors. Receptors are specialized cells seen in the sense organs and other parts of the body to receive the stimuli. These specialized cells are known as receptors. How do these receptors work? The receptors receive the stimuli. They generate suitable impulses. The impulses reach the brain. Last step, the responses occur when these impulses generated by the receptors reach the brain. The last point of page number 8 is the function of nervous system. Nervous system controls and coordinates all the actions of our body. Now we can study the main points of page number 9. Nerve cells or neurons are the basic structural units of the nervous system. Like all other cells, neuron also has a cell membrane, cytoplasm and nucleus. But they are different from other cells in their shape. There are long filaments are seen starting from the cell body. Now we can study the different parts of a neuron. They are dendrite, dendron, cell body, axon, axonite, and synaptic knob. What are the peculiarities or characteristics and functions of these parts? The first one is dendrite. It is a branch of dendron. It receives the impulses from the adjacent neuron. The next part is dendron. It is a short filament from the cell body and it carries the impulses from dendrite to the cell body. The next part is cell body. Cell body contains the nucleus and cytoplasm and other cell organelles. It carries the impulses from dendron to the axon. The next part is axon. It is the longest filament from the cell body and it carries the impulses from the cell body to the axonite or to outside. The next part is axonite. It is the branch of axon and it carries impulses from axon to the synaptic knob. And the last part is synaptic knob. It is seen at the tip of the axonite and it secretes the neurotransmitter. The next we are going to study about myelin sheath. The axons of most of the neurons are repeatedly encircled or covered by a lipid containing membrane, and that membrane is known as myelin sheath. So what is myelin sheath? The axons are covered by a lipid containing membrane, and that membrane is known as myelin sheath. The myelin sheath in the nerves is formed of Schwann cells, but the myelin sheath in brain and spinal cord is formed of some specialized cells called oligodendrocytes. The myelin sheath has shiny white color. The part of the brain and spinal cord where myelinated nerve cells are seen, that part is seen as white. So that part of the brain is known as white matter, and the part where non-myelinated nerve cells are seen, that is grey in color, and that is known as grey matter. Now we can study what are the different functions of myelin sheath. First point, it provides nutrients and oxygen to the axon. Second point, it accelerates the impulses. Third point, it acts as an electric insulator. Fourth point, it protects the axon from external shocks. Next point, the outer surface of the plasma membrane of the neuron is positively charged and the inner surface is negatively charged. This charge difference is due to the difference in the distribution of certain ions. When stimulated, the distribution of ions in a particular part changes. Positive charge changes to negative charge and negative charge becomes positive charge. And this charge difference is momentary. And after that, the charges will become as before. That means positive charge becomes negative charge and negative charge becomes positive. After a moment, the negative becomes positive and positive become negative. Like this, the adjacent parts are stimulated and the charges changes. And like this, the messages are transmitted through the neurons. The next we can study about synapse. What is synapse? Synapse is the junction between two neurons, or a neuron and a muscle cell and a neuron and a glandular cell. When the impulses reach the synaptic knob, certain chemicals are secreted from the synaptic knob to the synaptic cleft. And these chemical substances are known as neurotransmitters. And what are the functions of neurotransmitter? They stimulate the adjacent dendrite and new electric impulses are generated. The examples of neurotransmitters are acetylcholine and dopamine. What is the function of synapse? Synapse helps to regulate the direction and speed of impulses. The next we can study about the different types of neurons. According to the direction of impulse, neurons can be classified into two. They are sensory neurons and motor neurons. Sensory neurons carry the impulses to the brain and spinal cord. And motor neurons carry impulses from brain and spinal cord to various parts of the body. Next we can study how nerves are classified on the basis of their function. On the basis of their function, nerves are classified into three. They are sensory nerve, motor nerve and mixed nerve. Sensory nerve, that is formed of sensory nerve fibers. And what is its function? It carries the impulses from various parts of the body to brain and spinal cord. The second one is motor nerve, and it is formed of motor nerve fibers. And the motor nerve carry the impulses from brain and spinal cord to various parts of the body. Third type is mixed nerve. It is formed of sensory nerve fibers and motor nerve fibers. And what is its function? It carries impulses to and from the brain and spinal cord. Next we can study about the nervous system in human beings. The nervous system consists of two parts, namely central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system consists of cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Cranial nerves are of 12 pairs and spinal nerves are of 31 pairs. Now we can study how the brain is protected. The brain is protected inside the skull. It is covered by a three-layered membrane called meninges. The inner membranes of meninges and the ventricles of the brain is filled with the cerebrospinal fluid. What is the peculiarity of cerebrospinal fluid? Cerebrospinal fluid is formed from blood and it is reabsorbed into the blood. Now we can study what are the functions of cerebrospinal fluid. The first function, it provides nutrients and oxygen to the tissues of the brain. Second, it regulates the pressure inside the brain. Third, it protects the brain from injuries. Next, we can study about the 5 parts of the brain. They are cerebrum, cerebellum, medulla oblongata, thalamus and hypothalamus. Cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. The second largest part of the brain is cerebellum. And the important part of the brain is medulla oblongata. Now we can study the different positions of these different parts of the brain. Cerebrum is seen at the top of the brain. Just below the cerebrum is the thalamus. Cerebellum is seen behind the cerebrum as 2 flaps. Below the thalamus hypothalamus is situated. The medulla oblongata is seen below the cerebrum near the cerebellum. What are the peculiarities of cerebrum? In cerebrum, there are numerous fissures and folds are seen. And the grey colored part is seen outside, and that is known as cortex. And the white colored part is seen inside, and that is known as medulla. What is the peculiarity of cerebellum? Fissures and grooves are present in cerebellum. What is the peculiarity of medulla oblongata? It is rod shaped. Now we can study what are the functions of the different parts of the brain. Cerebrum is the center of thought, intelligence, memory, and imagination. It evokes sensations like sound, taste, touch, smell, vision, etc. It controls the voluntary movements. Now we can study what are the functions of cerebellum. Cerebellum coordinates the muscular activities. It maintains the equilibrium of the body. What is the function of medulla oblongata? It controls the involuntary actions. The voluntary actions are controlled by cerebrum, but the involuntary actions are controlled by the medulla oblongata. Involuntary actions examples are breathing and heartbeat. What are the functions of thalamus? It acts as the relay station of impulses to and from the cerebrum. And it also analyzes the impulses from various parts of the body and sends the important one to the cerebrum. Now we can study what is the function of hypothalamus. Hypothalamus maintains the homeostasis. Next we can study about the spinal cord. Spinal cord is the continuation of medulla oblongata. The spinal cord is protected inside the vertebral column. It is covered by the meninges, and in between the layers of meninges, the fluid called cerebrospinal fluid is seen. The central canal, which is seen at the center of the spinal cord, is also filled with cerebrospinal fluid. And in spinal cord, white matter is seen outside and grey matter is seen inside. 31 pairs of spinal nerves are arising from the spinal cord. The sensory impulses reach the spinal cord through the dorsal root, and the motor impulses go out of the spinal cord through the ventral root. The dorsal root and the ventral root join to form a spinal nerve. Now, what is the function of spinal cord? The impulses from different parts of the body are transmitted to the brain through the spinal cord. Like that, the impulses from the brain are transmitted to the different parts of the body through the spinal cord. That means the impulses from different parts of the body are transmitted to and from the brain through the spinal cord. And it also coordinates the repeat repeated movements like walking and running. Next we can study what are called reflex actions. The accidental and involuntary responses towards the stimuli are called reflex actions. They do not happen consciously. How does reflex action happen in our body? First step is stimulus. The stimulus is received by the receptor and the receptor generate impulses. The sensory neuron carries the impulses to the spinal cord. And in the next step, the interneuron connects the sensory neuron and the motor neuron, and it generates quick responses according to the sensory impulses. And the motor neuron carries the information from the spinal cord to related muscle, and with the help of related muscle, the hand is withdrawn. Fill up the flow chart showing the pathway of impulses in a reflex action. Now we can complete the flow chart. Stimulus, receptor, sensory neuron, interneuron, motor neuron, and related muscle. The pathway of impulses in a reflex action are known as reflex arc. The center of reflex action is spinal cord, and such reflexes are called as spinal reflex. But some reflexes are under the control of cerebrum. They are known as cerebral reflexes. So there are two types of reflexes: cerebral reflexes and spinal reflexes. If the reflex action is controlled by the spinal cord, such reflexes are known as spinal reflexes. And when the reflexes are controlled by the cerebrum, such reflexes are known as cerebral reflex. An example of spinal reflex is the leg is withdrawn as a thorn pierces the foot. An example of cerebral reflex is when light suddenly falls on our eyes, or when the objects move towards our eyes, we blink our eyes. Next we are going to study about the autonomous nervous system. The activities that takes place beyond the conscious level are controlled by autonomous nervous system, and it is a part of peripheral nervous system. Autonomous nervous system consists of sympathetic system and parasympathetic system. The changes that takes place in our body during the emergency situation is done by the sympathetic nervous system, and our body return to the normal state with the help of parasympathetic system. Sympathetic system and the parasympathetic system together form the autonomous nervous system. The pupil in the eye dilates during sympathetic system, but it contracts in parasympathetic system. The production of saliva decreases in sympathetic system, but the production of saliva increases in the parasympathetic system. In sympathetic system, trachea expands, but in parasympathetic system, trachea contracts. The heartbeat increases in sympathetic system, but in parasympathetic system, heartbeat becomes normal. During the emergency situation, the sympathetic system slows down the gastric activities. When we attain the normal state, the parasympathetic system makes the gastric activities normal. Glycogen is converted to glucose in sympathetic system, but glucose is converted to glycogen in parasympathetic system. The production of hormone increases in sympathetic system, but the production of hormone decreases in parasympathetic system. Peristalsis in the intestine slows down during the emergency situation. But when we attain the normal state, peristalsis in the intestine becomes normal. The urinary bladder regains the normal state in sympathetic system, but the urinary bladder contracts in parasympathetic system. In nervous system disorders, we have to study three important diseases. They are Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and epilepsy. The causes of Alzheimer's are accumulation of an insoluble protein in the neural tissues of the brain, and the neurons get destroyed. The symptoms of Alzheimer's are loss of memory, inability to recognize friends and relatives, and inability to do the routine works. The reasons of Parkinson's are the destruction of specialized ganglions in the brain. The production of dopamine is reduced. Dopamine is an example of neurotransmitter. It is reduced. Its production is reduced in the brain. The symptoms of Parkinson's are loss of body balance, irregular movement of the muscles, shivering of the body, and profuse salivation. The causes of epilepsy are continuous and irregular electric charges in the brain. And the symptoms are continuous muscular contraction, frothy discharge from the mouth, clenching of the body. The patient falls unconscious.